right. Welcome back to our next episode of Women's Wellness Wisdom. Adrienne and I are here today to talk about something that is near and dear to our hearts, our guts. Um, we want to dive into how gut health has an impact on our hormones, because I think people sometimes think of those as two separate systems, and we've been trained to do that. But today we're going to dive into how really interconnected they are. So come along with us. I'm Dr. Jenny, a physical therapist turned functional medicine practitioner, focusing on women's health and hormone related issues primarily.
And I'm Adrienne Roth, and I'm an OT who's also a functional medicine provider. And my passion is women's health and hormones as well.
So yay. So
So,
today I think we want to talk a little bit about where does the gut come into hormone play, right? Because I've had so many people come to me focusing on hormones, right? And I'm sure you've had these clients as well. And my hormones are out of whack and I'm having these symptoms, and we can talk about all that is. And then when we really dive in deep, what I find out is they've had gut issues for years, and we can't fix the hormones until we fix the gut, right?
right,
So
right.
let's talk a little bit about why the gut plays such an important role, and then we can dive into a little bit how that specifically impacts hormones and see if we can convince other folks that gut health is the first step.
Yeah, no. So, our gut is more than just a food, does more than just digest our food. It's where our
Yeah.
estrogen's metabolized. It helps regulate inflammation. It's responsible for nutrient absorption and also our immune function. So, really, when something's off in our gut, we'll feel it throughout our whole body. Specifically, we see this in our women who have hormonal imbalances.
Yes, absolutely. And so I think, when we talk about like information in versus information out, right? Hormones are created, they're transported, they have to be used properly, and they have to be broken down. And all of that is important. But the one factor that we're not accounting for then is how is that information getting into or translating through the body, and how does the gut participate in that? And so when we think about gut health, I think it's important that we think about all the things that the gut does in relation to our hormones. So I want to start and talk about estrogen. And so estrogen, Adrienne mentioned, is metabolized and moved out of the body. So when we talk about symptoms of like excess estrogen, for example, that has to do with gut health. It also has to do with just the composition of our estrogen in our body as well. So I don't think a lot of folks know this, but there's a huge association between what happens in our microbiome and our estrogen production as well. Go ahead. I didn't, yeah, sorry. I had
No,
another
that's
thought, but I feel like
perfect.
I was like a run on sentence.
No, you're perfect. You can finish the thought. You want to finish it?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, so really like while the liver plays a process and helps us package our estrogen for elimination, once it reaches the intestines, our gut bacteria plays a role in what happens next. And some of the enzymes in our gut help unpackage the estrogen and break it down to leave our system. So when our gut isn't functioning properly, right, this is where we see recirculation of estrogen in the body and estrogen dominance. I can let you.
100%. Yes. And I feel like that's something that is underappreciated, that this is we've got to have the right things in there. We've got to have the microbiome makeup. We've got to have something called beta glucuronidase, which plays a huge factor in reducing and eliminating that estrogen from our body. And if we don't have that, we get that estrogen recirculation. And so that is one place in that estrogen chain where things can get broken down, for lack of a better term, right? And so now we've got more estrogen circulating than we want to, and then the body has to figure out what to do with that. And so whether it's then presenting as increased signaling, and so we get those estrogen dominant symptoms, or the body will recognize that we have this extra thing floating around that we don't want and start to pack it away in fat tissue. And so we see those things like extra abdominal fat, which go hand in hand with that estrogen dominance. So it's really important that we get to the root of this to get that estrogen out of the body the way that it's meant to clear.
And so on the other side of the gut, right? So we talked about how it breaks down estrogen, but it also is responsible for our nutrient absorption, right? Which really
Yes.
plays a big role in our hormones and our cycle and just for optimal functioning.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think in addition to that, then when we talk about what's happening within our gut and how that's
Yeah.
playing into our hormones, the other place we see a major impact on the hormones is something called leaky gut. And this is where those tight junctions, those cells in the gut, start to separate. and allow the contents of the gut to be absorbed directly into the body, right? So yes, we want to absorb nutrients, but that's not the way they're transported. And so when we have this leakiness, we now have something that's a foreign body inside of our body, right? And so our body's going to respond with an inflammatory response, just like it would if you had a cut and you got some bacteria in there. And so we get this low grade inflammation in the body, and then that can have all sorts of effects on our hormones.
Right? It kind of sends our body into like a fight or flight, right? It's trying to attack, it's fighting to get rid of this stuff in there. And so, Jenny, when we talk about like this leaky gut and how it impacts our hormones, what would you say are major contributors to this? Or maybe we should go back. What are some symptoms we might see outside of like, estrogen dominance, that would kind of indicate like a leaky gut?
Yeah, good question. Oh, so I think probably one of the biggest ones I see is bloating around eating, right? Non-specific, it's not a specific food. And most of the women I work with, bless them, have tried to nail down like when I eat rice or when I eat potatoes. And the reality is it's not usually one food, it's just eating, right? So eating causes this inflammatory or bloating response in the body, that is almost always associated with that. I think another one is kind of just a general puffiness, right? Because we've got this low grade inflammation now throughout our body. And so our body's reacting with this inflammatory response, which causes inflammation, which causes some mild swelling, right? So it's again, that puffiness is another tool. What else would you add to that?
I would say we've also, when we see inflammation, we might see like when we're looking cycle specific, more painful periods, some
Yes.
more PMS symptoms, things like
Yep.
that. Also, bowel changes, either loose stools or constipations, like a
Sure.
really big one.
Yes.
I would say a lot of the women that we see, or I see it a lot, that when they come in, they say they're having these hormonal issues, but when we dig into what their stool looks like or their bowel movements, we're seeing some not normal, uh,
Yeah.
not normal things.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that because my 6-year-old is, he's a boy and he loves to walk around and say, My mom talks about poop because that's something I address all the time. So I came back from my last conference and brought him a little poop emoji,
Oh my
from one of the
gosh.
vendors. And it's like his favorite toy. And my husband just kind of cringes, but it's real, right? Like we need to talk about stool when we talk about overall body health. And I think so many people are embarrassed or afraid to talk about it. And listen, like everyone's doing it. And if you're not, you've got way bigger problems. So I think that's a huge one for sure. Yeah.
Right. And so when we look at, our hormonal symptoms and our other symptoms, ultimately, if we don't address this gut issue, this inflammation, this, if there is a gut issue going on, if we don't address
Yeah.
it first, we can't stop the chain reaction that's leading to hormonal imbalances. And so I think it's really important that we look at these gut symptoms and acknowledge like, hey, there's an underlying issue, and that's kind of, as a practitioner, one of the places I like to go first,
Yeah.
when treating hormones.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you brought in the psycho component of this. I'm going to add a couple more because I think people don't always associate this with hormones, but like
Yeah.
brain fog,
Yes.
and sort of skin issues almost always have a gut component as well. So acne, high allergies, those kinds of things can be signs of leaky gut as well. So if you're thinking like, oh, I don't know about those other things, they didn't apply to me, I feel like most people have those things going on as well.
And one of the things about leaky gut is it, like you said, you get bloating mostly around eating, and most of our
Yeah.
clients are trying to identify a specific food that they have an intolerance to. And
Yeah.
a lot of times when you get to that root cause of gut healing, or you heal your gut, some of these foods you might not have been able to eat before, you can eat in moderation and things like that because your body is not in this fight or flight state. Um,
Absolutely. It doesn't have to be gone forever. And I think
no.
neither one of us are proponents of removing things that don't need to be your restrictive diets, and certainly not with people who are focusing on fertility or young kids or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, kind of moving on from there, then, what do you recommend for people from a gut health perspective related to their hormones?
I think the biggest thing, and I know you're a big proponent for food forward approach as well, is
Yeah.
eating the rainbow and having a diverse diet, really focusing on those whole foods, the different types of whole foods, having a variety of
Mhm.
them, because that's what feeds your microbiome and gets that good bacteria growing in your stomach.
Yeah, I love that. I think the second piece, and it kind of goes into something we didn't talk a whole lot about today, but for blood sugar regulation, which has such
Yeah.
big impact on hormones, eating things like healthy fats, enough protein, and eating those things at the beginning of the meal to help stabilize the blood sugar can be really helpful as well. So I think having, good fiber, healthy proteins, healthy fats, in addition to that colorful rainbow, is a really important piece of stabilizing blood sugar and then also having the building blocks for your hormones.
Right. And just having that balance, I feel like when it comes to eating is really the
Yes.
key.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
the other big one that I think people don't realize impacts their gut is stress. And I know you and I
Oh,
preach this all the time. We
sure.
need to learn to control our stress, and it's the hardest thing I think for us to control.
Right.
But really managing our stress really impacts our gut microbiome. So finding those things that help you manage that, whether it's time outside, getting a workout in, doing some breathing,
Yeah.
getting enough sleep, all
Yeah.
the things we know we should be doing.
100%. And I think tracking too, right? I think, you and I both wear Aura Ring and we're
Yeah.
proponents of having data and there are people I would say that's not good for because too
Yeah.
much data can be stressful. But I think just being aware of times where you don't even feel stressed because you've lived like that for so long, right? It's the frog boiling in the pot of water kind of thought. You have no idea the impact it's having on your body and being able to pause and see where those inflections are and take moments to reduce them is really helpful.
Yeah. And I
I
would
think I'm,
say,
oh, sorry,
oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, I was
Nope.
just gonna say,
I'm jumping to a
being
different
able to,
idea. So,
okay. See, sometimes, like you said, being able to see it doesn't help. But for me, sometimes I don't realize that I'm operating at a level that
yes.
is not healthy until I go back and see the warning. And I'm like, ooh, what did I do today? Like, how do I
Yeah.
need to reel this in? And we talk about regulation, how it impacts all the people around you. So it's just, it's a, it's really cool to see that sometimes on a graph. But that's a
Yeah.
side note. So
Yeah. No,
I'll
no,
let
no.
you
I
finish.
agree fully. Well, I think this one goes hand in hand, right? Because it's all about slowing down and mindfulness. But I know so many of us, whether you're a mom working in healthcare, like I feel like I had a double whammy of this. Eating fast, right? Eating on the go, not sitting down and chewing our food wholly, really being present for the meal. All of that can impact digestion, which can then have such an impact on our hormones down the line. So I feel like this is something I'm still not successful with, but I'm aware of it.
Yeah.
And I think
Awareness is
I've
the
gotten better
first.
at it over the years, right? Yes. But just really, really being cognizant of how I'm chewing my food up. Digestion actually starts in the mouth. And so if we're
Yeah.
inhaling that food without really eating it, we're really having an impact on our gut before we've even given it a chance.
Yeah, no, and I could be wrong about this, so someone should fact check me on it. But I believe a large portion of like more than half of digestion occurs in the mouth. Is that it's
Yeah.
something
It's a big
surprising?
number. Yeah.
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 So and how many of us are just eating on the fly and inhaling as we go? So
Sure.
I'm guilty of that all the time.
Yeah, yeah. But I think especially if you're having gut related issues, being intentional about, this is the beginning, is right here. We talked about the importance of what's coming out the other end and everything in between. So I think people are so focused on the middle, they forget both ends of that are important.
Well, and also to that point, like when we talk about stress, and if we take a moment to reduce our stress too while we're eating, food is actually, for me at least, one of the more enjoy. I love eating. I love tasting foods. I love having things. So you might as well enjoy it, relax while it goes down.
Yeah.
And you're hitting three different things right there: your nutrition, stress, and improving your digestion by just slowing down while you eat. So
Yeah, I love that. So I think key takeaway is don't write off your gut as not being part of your hormone symptoms because it has such an impact on so many different levels. And if you're having hormonal symptoms, I challenge you to think about the things we've talked about today from a gut health perspective and how they might be having an effect on your hormones. Yeah. So I think, and I think kind of just to give a quick shout out, right? Adrienne finished a really cool course that is focused on hormones, but you talk a lot about gut health in there, right?
yeah, gut health is actually so. If you're interested, ask us for more information about it. But we really dive into the foundations of health before we really get into the cycle and hormones. And gut health is a section we really hit on. as well as blood sugar, which Jenny mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
So if you're curious about learning more about how it impacts your body and how you can help support your body,
Yeah. Well, and I
check it
think it
out.
just highlights for me how important it is, right? Like we don't bypass that when we talk about hormone health because you'll end up right back where you were. No matter what you do, if you haven't addressed the foundations, including good health, including blood sugar, before you get there, you will end up having problems in different places. Maybe you put a band-aid on one, but you'll start seeing others if you don't get to the root of the gut health component. So,
Well, and I
um,
think it's exactly that. It's a band-aid unless we
yeah.
talk about the foundations. So
Absolutely. Yeah. So with that, if it sounds like something that's interesting to you or something you want to know more about, you can reach out to us on our website and book a call with either one of us. We'll talk a little more strategy in our approach, and you can find our course there as well. Until next time.
have a great week.
Bye. Bye.